eye on that. Let me know if we need to redo anything.
My audio is redundant anyways.
So at this point, we're probably live already but like I said, it always is live before it says we actually are. So turn that down so I don't hear myself. And then here is the link that you can tweet out if you want. There we go.
There must be like a quicker way to do this.
There has to be. I just don't know what it is.
Suggest. All right, let me see if my notes sync up today. Because last time, oh yeah, what happened that one time? Copy link. Do live stream. Paste. No description. Good. Facebook. I'll just put the link. I'm not even going to put live stream. I'm just going to click the link.
Just do it. Just put the link without any type of context.
And then we'll see if someone actually clicks on it. Oh, it's got my face on a picture though. That's disappointing. Yeah, it's disappointing. Why does it choose my face? I think I saw a thumbnail
with my face. Yeah.
You know what? Maybe the algorithm decides.
Yeah. Well, just blame. I was going to say Mark Zuckerberg, but I can't. That's not who actually owns Twitter. Jack. Blame Jack.
It's Jack.
The guy who invented Twitter.
Oh.
Jack Dorsey. I want to say that's what his name is.
He's the Tom.
The Tom.
He's
yes.
the Tom of Twitter.
Okay. So Dave, this is what I'm envisioning to go with our biblical theme. Well, somewhat biblical theme. I want you to come in and the entire floor of the house is going to be covered with frogs.
Okay.
And I'll give it to you, your acting acumen, to take it from there.
Actor. Oh, Kyle, your floor is covered in frogs again?
I know, this is crazy. There is witches, and now there's runes, and now I have frogs. It's all over the place. I don't even know how they got in here.
At least it smells better than usual.
Actually, now the more I look at them, maybe they're toads. What's the difference between a frog and a toad?
One you can lick, and the other you can, yeah.
You take one, I'll take one. Let's do this, buddy. Ride or die.
We went fast and furious on this. I'm ready. Yeah.
It's all about family, is what I'm trying to say, Dave.
My familia.
All right. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
And my name is Dave.
This is a podcast where a sentient machine forces us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse. Although we do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. Today, we're going to be watching the movie Magnolia. So, Dave, I think where we need to start off with this is... Oh, wait. So we have got a knock on the guest door here, Dave.
How are you going to open that thing with all the frogs on the floor?
Well, let's squeegee them out of the way. 1 second. Okay, let's open this door. Oh, Justin, welcome.
Hey, I stepped on so many frogs and I feel nauseous.
Well, luckily, the way that my room setup is, there is a toilet in the corner right next to the stove.
Oh, thank
apparently
God.
This is a New York flat that I live in. Justin, do you have some time to watch the movie Magnolia with us?
Magnolia? Magnolia? I do this at least once or twice a year anyway, so of course.
Great. I'm so glad you have 3 hours to spare on this random Friday.
Yeah, there's nothing like sitting down for just a short 3 hour and 8 minute movie.
Brief jaunt into America.
Brief film. Maybe before we jump too far into this, Justin, could you maybe describe who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name is Justin Bills, and I'm a local pastor here in Calgary. And that's about it. Kyle's my friend, and I'm a fan of this podcast. But exciting. And I like the movie Magnolia.
Hey,
converging. It's all converging.
All prerequisites for you to actually be a guest on this show. So this is
I know you like clergy on the podcast. It's all the time. Hot item.
We've been talking about it off mic. We need more conscience. Yeah. We need a moral direction, Kyle.
I mean, when we had that bishop on to talk about Sleepy Hollow, I thought that was our best episode. So.
Francis won't return our calls. So
Yeah, that's right. Old Frank. So, I want to, I guess, start with you here, Justin. What is your history with the movie Magnolia?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I rented it to watch with my mom first, and then
Great family viewing. Yes.
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes in, and she had me turn it off. And then I went a couple years.
So wait, what year would that have been?
This would have been probably 2005.
Okay.
So not 6 years after the release.
But you would have been what, early 20s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have been 20.
Okay.
Right on the dot. And then Punch Drunk Love was a movie experience. And so I started becoming a little bit obsessed with Paul Thomas Anderson, P.T. Anderson, I like to call him. And then, so my mom had me turn it off. We rented the VHS, if you can believe that.
Wow.
And then
that had to have been a double VHS.
Yeah, it probably was. And then I remember years later getting the DVD. I put it in my laptop, and then I was staying at my sister's house, and I got locked out, and I had to jump the fence, and I threw my laptop in a bag over the fence. And I actually broke the laptop so it would never eject the DVD. So Magnolia, there was a 10-year period where the only DVD in my computer was Magnolia. So that's my relationship to the movie.
Was it still playing though? You could still watch it?
Yeah, it just wouldn't eject. So it was the only movie I could watch for quite a while.
That's hilarious.
Like the basis of a horror movie.
This is like, honestly, when you grew up in the 80s or 90s and you only had a limited amount of
tape,
a tape or a DVD that you could actually watch, I think it very much influences you. When I was a kid, there was at least like 4 films that were basically on rotation that I had, no joke, probably each seen 40-ish times, maybe up to 50 times. They were all taped off of the television, but they were Mary Poppins, Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, The Flight of the Navigator, and Princess Bride. Those are the 4 movies that I saw so many times as a kid.
It basically built Disney Channel for you.
Basically, except for Princess Bride, all 3, like the other 3 are Disney films. But,
no, well, it's on Disney streaming.
Disney owns everything now, yes,
That's
but
true.
they did not originally make that movie.
As you wish.
Did you Flight of the Navigator was quite memorable for me too. Have you watched it on Disney Plus now that that's on there?
I want to, because I have to believe that it does not hold up. Is what my guess is going to be, but
there's no way. Mine, if I can interject, is: did you guys ever get a preview of HBO or for like a week? Sometimes they would do that.
No, we didn't get HBO on the farm.
Oh, okay, because we taped The Net with Sandra Bullock.
Sandra Bullock? Okay.
Yeah.
So I've seen The Net probably more than any other movie. It's about the internet.
I know.
I do feel like this is the beginning of a horror movie. This is
the
crazy.
dangers that can happen on the internet.
You're like stuck in it's like a Charlie Kaufman film or something.
Yeah, Dave, what are the movies that you saw like the most in your life?
Oh, I don't know. We did the same thing with the EP tapes. You can switch the setting on the VCR, so they'll tape for 8 hours on each cassette. That's the way you did. Enter the Dragon was a good one. I think we taped that off of City TV, and we broke that tape. And I don't have to ask my brother. My brother's got a much better memory than this, but we had quite a few cassettes. But I don't remember actually specifically which movies we watched over and over again. I used to know Enter the Dragon verbatim, but that time's gone. It's like a finger pointing to the moon.
Just to finish off the conversation with Magnolia and Paul Thomas Anderson, P.T. Anderson, what are your feelings towards his later movies afterwards, Justin?
So I probably obsessed with Paul Thomas Anderson. So I I through Punch Drunk Love, I just started going back. So at the time, it was Magnolia, Boogie Nights, and Sydney, or Hard Eight.
Hard Eight, yeah.
Yeah, and all of his films are really amazing, and I to be honest, love them all. There Will Be Blood, awesome, loved it.
Yeah.
Kyle, you and I saw The Master in theaters together.
We also watched Phantom Thread together in
and
theaters.
Phantom Thread.
That's
and
right.
I love those films. There is one glaring P.T. Anderson movie that I hate, and it's called Inherent Vice. And I left and I just went, well, there's one P.T. Anderson movie I can't stand, and it's Inherent Vice. I will never watch that movie again. I just didn't like it.
I will say, though, you and I probably enjoy The Master more than most people do. So at least that's my sense.
Yeah, I love The Master. Yeah.
Okay, well, Dave, how about yourself? I guess start with Magnolia. What's your history with Magnolia?
I didn't watch this in 1999, and I too rented it. I was talking hypothetically, if I'd already watched it with my wife, 2 nights ago, I think we watched it together somewhere on a couch. 1999.
No, what would have been great, though, is that somehow you and Justin's stories had intersected, and when he threw his laptop over the fence, actually hit you in the head, and you were the reason why that DVD stayed in that laptop for so long.
It's plausible. I wasn't in a good place in 1999 by the end of the year, so I might have been here. I don't know, but yeah. So I remember that it was supposed to be really good. I remember it's supposed to be very long, and I remember not wanting to spend a lot of time watching a good movie for a long time. And then whenever we rented it, I remember liking it a lot. And I too was introduced to P.T. Anderson through Punch Drunk Love, which is a great movie. I was a bit of an Adam Sandler fan at the time. And then I watched Hard Eight. I still have not watched Boogie Nights. And then I think the last P.T. Anderson movie I watched was There Will Be Blood, which was fine.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
That's the one I think is his masterpiece, personally. I think that's a great movie.
I like that you came to Punch Drunk Love as an Adam Sandler fan. Like, were you expecting to like zabba-da-doo, zabba-da-da-doo?
No, you know what? I was a big enough fan that when the reviews came out and they were talking about, or even the pre-hype, that this was going to be his turn to dramatic acting. I think pretty sure already Jim Carrey had shown some range as a comedian. I can't remember if that's true yet, into drama. So I thought, this guy's might be good. And then in the commercials, it's so absurdist anyways, that there's a hint it might be a comedy, and then you watch it and it's quite gut punching at the same time. So I really liked it. But yeah, I think I was aware that it wasn't going to be an Adam Sandler produced film.
It wasn't Happy Madison.
Yeah, it wasn't a Happy Madison production, which it was the cool thing in the times.
I think it would have been even more amazing had it just been exactly what Punch Drunk Love is, but in the last 5 minutes he just turned into like the Water Boy or Happy Gilmore.
Rob Schneider appears.
Yeah, right.
There's a Rob Schneider cameo.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what? So this is wild to me, because that means that all three of us, our introductory film was Punch Drunk Love, because that was also mine. I went and saw it in a theater with a girl. It was a date that we were on, and she hated it.
Oh no!
Absolutely did not like that at all, and was mad that I had suggested we go and see that movie. But I really enjoyed it, so I wanted to explore more of what that director had in store. Weirdly enough, though, for Paul Thomas Anderson, again, love There Will Be Blood. I watched that actually twice in the theaters because I liked it so much.
It's depressing.
It is depressing. Saw The Master, saw Phantom Thread. The Magnolia was something that took a while for me to actually see. It was just on my list of shame, having not seen it for a while. Weirdly enough, again, this is why Justin's on this podcast. The first time I saw it was with Justin at his house, when me, him, and another friend of ours, Daniel, had our manly movie nights where we would watch movies like this.
So the laptop was still working at that time.
Still working. It was great.
I'm just imagining three of you crowded around a Dell laptop.
Yeah, the reason we watched it is I just said, there's one movie I can watch.
That's it. This is why I love the Letterboxd app so much, is that I can actually tell you the exact date that was, Justin, which was May 25th of 2014. Is the
really?
Yeah. So
wow.
that is the date that we watched that movie together. Loved it. Thought it was great, and I'm really looking forward to revisiting this movie here again and seeing if I still think it holds up. What is it like in a post-Trump era? I guess we will find out. So let's do this. I'm going to go thank some sponsors, and then when we return, it'll be our conversation about Magnolia.
Hey, Kyle, I'm just sorry to interrupt. I'm just realizing I'm recording in my office, which is in a school, and my audio must be awful because school's just, there's students around.
Sure.
I was hoping that school would have let out by now, but it looks like it's happening now. So I'm sorry. You might just have to.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
He also looks at if you have a clicky pen. I learned that the first time.
Oh, yeah. Just keep clicking it right up next to the microphone.
Did you do that, Dave?
That's the first time I recorded with them. If you ever want to hear broken audio that Kyle had to fight with, it's great. I can just hear him screaming in the background as he's trying to process this thing.
It's like, click. 5 extra hours of work for me. Thank you.
That's why we're such good friends now.
That's right. Yeah,
we've already suffered. Well, you have. Yeah.
Well, that was a bit of a marathon, but we did it. We watched the movie. In a not as non-spoilery as possible, Justin, what is your perspective of Magnolia to this day?
So my perspective of Magnolia is that it's not a perfect film. Actually, I think there's a novelty in 1999 to weave stories that don't seem to be connected, but with the reveal at the end that there's some thread through it all. To me, that was really novel when Paul Thomas Anderson did it. I think now it's a little bit, I think Crash did that.
Yeah.
You just
this is almost like the oh my God, Pulp Fiction did this basically too. It was like, how is all this gonna like fit together, sort of thing. It was a thing in the 90s though. I feel it was like, ooh, look at this, like multiple storylines, they're all gonna intersect, right?
Yeah, and there's things that to me haven't aged really well, but the part that will last forever is the connection you feel to the characters, and some of Paul Thomas Anderson's directing choices I think are fantastic, and the acting is I think is off the charts. So I feel emotional every time I watch it. I feel like it makes me, honestly, this experience watching it made me want to be this is so stupid to say. It made me want to be a better person.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. Put that on the poster.
I've not run into that yet, Kyle. That's incredible.
The last time I watched it was probably that May 25th, 2014. And now I have older kids. And so some of the themes in the movie of kids dealing with the trauma or pain that their fathers have passed on. So watching it now that my kids are older, I basically was like, I want to go home and not screw up my kids.
Well, you've already failed, Justin.
I think so. But that just watching it today, that's my initial thoughts was those things hold up for me. Yeah.
I do think that there is that resonant through line of all the interactions with fathers in this movie. I am not a father, although I do have one. So I think I am only getting maybe part of that, puzzle piece, so to speak. But Dave, you're also a father. What is your feeling of Magnolia in the year 2020?
Have we already reviewed American Beauty?
Yes.
Okay, so I felt more impacted, even though I didn't like that movie nearly as much, by the parental relationships in that movie, because that's a pretty strongly negative one.
Mhm.
This one, I agree. I mean, number one, whatever I feel about this movie, the acting is insane. There isn't a single performance in this film that, maybe I'll put it a different way. The Academy fucked this up by giving an Oscar to Michael Caine,
Yeah, this is
because
gonna be our recurring theme with this. Is like
yeah,
we've now, this is like probably the 5th time we've mentioned this. I love Michael Caine. I don't even know how he was nominated in this year.
crazy.
What
Like,
what
love
film
him.
was he nominated for?
The Cider House Rules.
Oh, right. The Cider House Rules was like the darling of 99, I feel like.
I know, and I don't
For
get it.
some reason.
After having seen it, I don't get it. I don't
Yeah.
understand why people like that movie.
Well, he didn't sound British, and he killed himself. So we
Well,
get an award for
spoilers,
that,
but
I guess.
okay.
But, no, I like every actor. Like, I think most of the main supporting actor and actresses did get nominated, but it could have gone across the board and give multiple nominations for each of the actors. I thought P.T. Anderson's a great director, so some of the technical things, and it's a beautiful film. And
Yeah, he's always able to give these really, or he's able to, I don't know, encourage these phenomenal performances. I don't get it. Like in almost every movie I've seen of his, it's like, whoa, like how did he get this performance from this person?
Yeah, I think Paul Thomas Anderson got the best performance from Adam Sandler that he'll ever give. Tom Cruise, I think this is Tom Cruise's most fantastic acting of his career.
Yes.
And then
I agree.
I think the same of Joaquin Phoenix and Daniel Day-Lewis. He
Although
gets the best performances out of actors.
Daniel Day-Lewis is Daniel Day-Lewis, but no, but he was very good in that other reasonably good movie that we mentioned. I was when Thomas Cruise first appeared, it reminded me of the reveal in Tropic Thunder, where I was like, this is where it comes from. He's actually can be quite a funny guy. So I thought it was very good. I was sucked right in for the 3 and 8 hours and 8
3 hours and 8 minutes, I think.
Sweating into this couch together, covered in frogs. So as a non-spoiler, I think I'll stay there.
For me, I guess we're in agreement in just the abstract, in that I really love just being a part of this world. I think what draws me in the most is each individual character seems so fully realized. And so I do want to learn more about them, see where they ultimately end up. Now, what I was doing on our way back here to the microphones was actually looking up older reviews, and specifically watching old clips of Roger Ebert talking about this movie, because this is one of his favorite movies from 1999. And most critics actually did like this movie, but there was a very strong contingent saying that this was actually the worst movie of 1999. So there was a little bit of disagreement with critics going on. But what I do enjoy, again, as non-spoiler as possible, is that what this movie is doing that I love is that it intentionally sets you up believing that it's going to end in a specific way, and then completely rips the rug from out underneath you to be like, actually, we're not actually even concerned about that. we're gonna do it in a different way. And specifically, when Justin was saying that there was these multiple storylines in most of these movies, everybody ends in the exact same spot at the exact same time. And that's not really what happens. There's an event that everyone experiences, but they're not all in the same spot. They're not all convening in the same area. And I think that the way that like what that actual ending is either going to frustrate you so completely, because it does somewhat come out of nowhere, or if you're like me, you're like, I love the absurdity of this, that this is how they decided to do it. And thus it kind of ends as its own like tall tale. Just the way that this movie opens up, where they talk about these 3 like coincidences that happened. So there's that part that I like. So yeah, I'm engrossed the entire time. the two small criticisms that I'll throw out. I have to slightly disagree with you, Dave, about every acting being great, because there's one that I actually think is a little bit subpar, and it's from an actress that I normally love, which is Julianne Moore.
Me too. Okay, Kyle, I wasn't gonna say it because I didn't, but I for some reason, Julianne Moore, my impression I got was acting. I am acting.
Yeah, like
I just kept feeling that through the performance.
Yeah, hers doesn't feel like a lived-in role. Again, which is weird because normally she is like great in anything that I've seen her in. So I don't know. There's something that kept pulling me out. Now, to be fair, her role is incredibly underwritten. Like, there's not much for her to do, other than to be like crying the entire time. So I kind of get it, but
really,
that's like
number one, you're talking about knowing where this is supposed to end, which is insane because this movie had no direction. And number two, Julianne Moore's character is supposed to be this sort of like bipolar, schizophrenic, unhinged woman who is scattering all around getting these meds. We don't even understand what her character is, but how could you play that differently if you were acting?
I think what I'm getting, writing. It could have been, yeah. It could be Paul Thomas Anderson's mistake here. I think it's more. It's one of those things when you can tell like an actor is gunning for an Oscar. That's what it feels like to me. Where it's like, unlike, I don't know, even contrasting here in this movie, you have like Jason Robards, who really just has to lay in a bed and talk to people. But I believe every moment that he's in, like he's actually an old guy dying in a bed. Whereas Julianne Moore, I feel like I can see the acting choices she's making while she's making them. It does not feel like a character who's strung out on meds. It feels like I'm an actor who is pretending to be strung out on meds. Wow. Like it's a very slight change there, but it just doesn't feel as real as what everybody else is doing. And what I mean by not necessarily knowing like the exact ending, but again, I know that when I watch Pulp Fiction, that everything is going to kind of end up back in that cafeteria scene, or well, not specifically the cafeteria scene, but I know all of those characters are going to be meeting each other throughout the entire thing. There's some characters that don't meet each other.
You don't think that's hindsight?
Maybe, but I mean, you're at a certain point halfway through that movie when every other character has met another character. It's like, okay, well, they're probably going to all do that. That's actually one of the big criticisms actually that this movie got back in 1999 is that it doesn't end the way that those other movies end, where there is no intersection with the characters by the end of the movie. And that's actually part of the thing that I like about it, is that it's the event that everyone experiences. It's not them actually meeting each of the other characters. Occasionally the characters cross paths, but that's actually not the main point. It's the event that happens that causes everyone to have a sudden realization in their own storyline.
And some of the connections are just throwaways, like Tom Cruise's father in the movie Partridge. He's the producer. He's the exec or the producer behind the game show. So that's really the only connection between those two story points. So they're tangentially connected. And then Paul Thomas Anderson said it was in the script that they were all within a mile radius of each other. But that never really gets said in the movie.
This is my point. I think too. I mean, I don't know if we're getting too deep into this on the overview, but you know, when you set up a movie with 2-3 minute setups where it is going to converge, particularly the murder suicide little story, then having to wait 3 hours for him to be like, you know what, go fuck yourself. It's not going to happen. That to me is not intelligent writing. That to me is just being an asshole. So we'll get into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, deeply, I think one of the major themes though is like, what is chance and what is like, what is complete chance, what is predetermined, or what is like. I think they use an actual term. Let me look it up because I wrote it down on my phone. So I want to get it exactly how they say it.
I will say quickly that I was engrossed enough in this movie for sure that I did not write a single note. I sat there for 3 hours and just was in it. Yeah. I have nothing. I got nothing.
So this is actually not exactly what they say, but it's basically them saying what is something that is developed by chance and what actually has a deeper meaning. And I think what Paul Thomas Anderson is going for is that all of these like chance things that are happening in this story is up to you to decide whether or not there is a deeper meaning to all of these stories. Or that maybe that's what part of the theme is. I think that setup is gearing you towards being like, oh yeah, there's going to be like this wonderful conclusion that is going to be this very pat, and like I can like wipe my hands and be like, cool, I'm being taken care of Hollywood. And he's rejecting that specifically and being like, maybe there isn't any deeper meaning to this. Maybe they all have their own choices that they can make in their lives, and they can either choose to break free of them or succumb to them. That's to me kind of like what part of it all is about. Anyways, we'll talk more about that because we're talking around a topic instead of actually talking about the topic. We'll save that for spoilers. Let's do some background information. So, Magnolia was released on Christmas Day of 1999. Also released that day was actually quite a few movies, but one that we've already talked about is Galaxy Quest, directed by Dean Parisot, written by Robert Gordon and David Howard, starring Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, and Sam Rockwell. But it also is when The Talented Mr. Ripley was released, written and directed by Anthony Minghella, starring Matt Damon, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Jude Law. Currently, it is rated 8.0 on IMDb. It has a 77 on Metacritic. And then over on Rotten Tomatoes, as of 147 critics, it's at 83%. And users, 192,966 of them, it is at 89%. It's available on DVD or Blu-ray. You can buy or rent it on iTunes. You can also rent it on YouTube, but it is not on any streaming platform, at least here in Canada. What's with that?
Stars.
Yeah, where's stars in this? Come on.
Just a quick, I don't know if I've asked this before, but from a mathematical perspective, is Rotten Tomatoes that if you give it 60% or higher as an individual, it counts as a fresh rating, and then that accumulates into the, because there's a lot of weird math that happens there in terms of stats. It doesn't reflect.
So this comes down to interpretation, only in that what Rotten Tomatoes is doing, it's just saying that 83% of the 147 critics gave it a positive rating. Yeah, but that positive rating could have been what you just did, Dave, which is like, I like part of this, but other parts of this was complete shit. So all you have, and so if it's kind of like that mixed review, that still kind of gets into the positive column.
Yeah, well, I'm just bringing it up because what was it? Cider House Rules or American Beauty? They were like at 95% user score, and it's impossible because that movie, what it might have been Cider House Rules, is not a 95%.
Yeah,
rating, but
regardless,
I'll stop talking. Yeah,
its budget was $37 million. It opened in very select theaters. I think it probably just opened up in New York and LA because its opening weekend was $193,000. But domestically, it would go on to make $22 million, and internationally, it would make another $25 million, bringing its total up to $48 million, which is $75 million with inflation. So, wouldn't have been a great return on their investment. Yes, it made more than its budget, but not probably more than its marketing budget. So, it's probably going to be considered a failure as far as Hollywood is considered, or as far as Hollywood considers. Its plot description from IMDb is an epic mosaic of interrelated characters in search of love, forgiveness, and meaning in the San Fernando Valley. What a great description of this movie.
So funny.
I couldn't figure out how to actually pare this down as far as like who stars in it. Or sorry, the machine couldn't figure out how to pare down who stars in this movie. So let me take a big breath. This stars John C. Reilly as Jim Curring, Tom Cruise as Frank Mackey, Jeremy Blackman as Stanley Spector, Philip Baker Hall as Jimmy Gator, Philip Seymour Hoffman as Phil Parma, William H. Macy as Donnie Smith, Jason Robards as Earl Partridge, Julianne Moore as Linda Partridge, and Melora Walters as Claudia Solomon. So, some of those people we've already talked about. Tom Cruise, we mentioned back in our Eyes Wide Shut episode. We've also talked about William H. Macy back in our Mystery Men episodes. You can go and check those out in your podcast feed. But what do we want to say about any of these other actors?
I'll make a quick note because you guys have already fanboyed PT Anderson, but your favorite movie, Inherent Vice, actually got nominated for 2 Oscars too. I didn't look up for what, but I think it was
makeup and production design or something like that.
Yeah, I think
costumes or something
has a nomination. I think I saw a YouTube video too that Phantom Thread had no cinematographer, and he just did it on his own, which I think is fascinating.
My strong opinion, by the way, of Phantom Thread is that it should have won for best score that year. But
yeah, fantastic score. Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I listened to it all the time.
I will say quickly, Jason Robards actually died the year after this movie came out. So talking about him acting well as a dying man, I mean,
that's method, man. He went full method on this.
And he passed away shortly after of cancer.
Yeah, I think it was. It's pretty well. Yeah, method, I guess.
How about John C. Reilly though? For me, John C. Reilly's career is so interesting because he started off very heavily in dramatic films.
Yes.
And then kind of veered off into comedy. And kind of does drama every so often again, but really kind of has 2 distinct careers.
I feel like you see that in this movie because he's like a tragic clown. I mean, Chicago too. There's just something about him that you want to cheer on both ways. So I think he's hilarious because he can play. It's kind of a little bit like what's Dumb and Dumber? What's that guy?
Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels. Right. There's a little bit of that, right? Where when he goes stupid, he can go all the way stupid, and then when he does drama, he can go the other way. The surprising thing with John C. Reilly is he hasn't won any awards, which I think.
No, he's also really interesting. I think I've now mentioned this podcast for the last 3 episodes, but he also did an interview with Mark Maron on the WTF podcast. This was probably 3 years ago. And what's super fascinating about him is that he straight up does not like talking about his process or about the acting profession at all. And so that interview is so weirdly structured because Mark tries to ask him questions, and then they end up just talking about Laurel and Hardy for most of the episode because John C. Reilly will not answer questions about his own process. He just doesn't want to talk about it.
Does he say why?
I remember him saying that he just finds it supremely self-serving and boring when actors talk about how they do what they do. And he just thinks he's a boring person. So he prefers not to talk about himself.
Well, I think he's in this movie. The rumor is that he went to PT Anderson and said, could you write me a character that's not dark, that isn't heavy, because he was playing a lot of heavy roles. And he said, could you write me a character that falls in love? So that's the rumor, is that Paul Thomas Anderson just wrote this for him. And also the other thing is New Line Cinema campaigned for John C. Reilly for Best Actor and did not campaign for anybody else.
Interesting.
For Best Actor. Everybody else was Best Supporting Actor. Yeah. So I don't know why they were pushing John C. Reilly's to get an award for this, which I think he's fantastic in it.
Oh, yeah.
But Tom Cruise is anyway, that's the performance that stands out to me. But
it is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's good. Yeah, I mean, they're all good. There's something. Have you heard of a movie called Manderley? Anyways, apparently John C. Reilly quit it because they were going to kill a donkey on set.
Jesus.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Good.
So he has morals.
He has morals. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's we talked about the extreme filming conditions on Three Kings, right? Where George Clooney basically slapped the director because he was yelling at the support staff. So there's people out there that are good, supposedly.
Yeah, well, apparently PT is not a very nice guy either.
Oh, really?
There's some rumors about. So apparently he was dating Fiona Apple during this movie, which is why she's in this movie. Her music.
Yeah.
And
Amy Mann, right? Isn't Amy Mann also?
Fiona Apple plays the voice of the lady on the phone. and kind of lends her for, and then the DVD commentary, which I know well because it was the only DVD in my computer, is there are so many like real life documentary footage of P.T. Anderson with Fiona Apple kind of lamenting the criticism about the length of the movie and all that. But I'm sure, Dave, you're getting to the Fiona Apple quote that I think came out recently. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I guess so. About them being strung out and there's being some violence and all this stuff. It's followed. I mean, it's just gossip, but I followed it up because apparently Daniel Day-Lewis described him as his evil twin brother.
Okay.
And Daniel Day-Lewis is not does not seem like the most stable guy,
Right.
you know, as a barometer. So it is an interesting color. But we saw with David, which David Fincher.
Yeah, David Fincher.
You know, Price of Genius, maybe. There's
I get. Well, I don't really love that excuse very much about like, oh, he's a genius, so he can just do whatever he wants.
Oh, no, they're not allowed. I mean, that's why gossip exists. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think with Paul Thomas Anderson, he's certainly a director that has a strong vision, and he's not Magnolia particularly is New Line Cinema saying, you were a cash cow with Boogie Nights. We love you. You make whatever you want now. And that's Magnolia. Yeah. It basically, New Line Cinema gave Paul Thomas Anderson no parameters, and they
blank check here. Go do what you want.
Blank check. Paul Thomas Anderson edited the trailers for it. He designed the poster for it. So it does kind of make you think he was probably hinged a little bit on this movie. And Fiona Apple's comment was, I forget exactly what she said, but she said, you don't know what it's like to have to be around Quentin Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson doing cocaine.
Yeah,
and she just said it's a nightmare.
I cannot imagine. Just cannot imagine. I will say, while we're on this topic, I do think that like the music in this movie is basically its own character. I really love the soundtrack this entire movie. I wrote down in my notes that essentially, for at least the first 2 hours, this is basically a musical. Like the way that they use music as underscoring, but also to play in the scene. And yes, there's that scene where like all the characters sing along to that one song that's on the radio. Like this is essentially a musical for those first 2 hours. It's structured like one, and they use music like one to advance story and to comment on what's going on in the plot already. Anyways, I just think it's a phenomenal score, and it should be called out.
Just quickly, Philip Seymour Hoffman, we know, tragically.
Yeah, tragic end. But the other Philip Baker Hall, who we've already seen in The Insider, great character actor who's been in a bunch of things, is like 90-something now and still is working and being in films. He's one of those guys who probably most people don't know his name, but you know his face because he's in so many things when you look at his career.
Great, because he is a great old man. He just plays the old man really well. Yeah.
This is kind of the career. I mean, not everyone can become like leading man Tom Cruise person, but like the Philip Baker Halls of the world have a great gig, right? Because what do you get to do? You do like 6 movies a year, 6 to 8 movies a year. You get paid fairly decently to come on and just like do your thing, and you usually just knock it out of the park. It's a great little gig. It's like him, Harry Dean Stanton, and all the other like character actors. Great. This is, of course, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. We've already talked about him. Just to put a fine point on that, started making short films, made his first feature in 1996 called Hard 8, did Boogie Nights, did this film, spent some time directing music videos for Fiona Apple and Amy Mann, which is probably why a lot of their music ends up in this movie. Then did Punch Drunk Love, There Will Be Blood, The Master, Inherent Vice, Phantom Thread. And then has, in the past few years, just done a bunch more music videos for Radiohead and Haim. And there is this untitled project that is currently filming to be released supposedly in 2021, but who knows, set in, the 1970s San Fernando Valley. The film follows This film follows a high school student who is also a successful child actor, and that also has Haim in it as well. So we get to experience more of that. I feel there's a lot of nepotism that goes along with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Imagine if that were a theme in Hollywood.
Yeah. By the way, I so egregiously was mistaken last week when I said that Sam Mendes was married to Maya Rudolph. Remember when I said that stupid thing last week?
Paul
That's
Thomas Anderson.
Paul Thomas Anderson. That's who she's married to. Wrong auteur. I got the wrong auteur.
And every time I see Maya Rudolph on SNL, it messes with your brain to be like, she goes home at night
to Paul
Thomas Anderson.
He's like
it's so weird.
It's crazy.
No,
it's just unbelievable.
Like, no, it's so weird
at the teat. It's hilarious.
No, it's just so weird to have like some guy who is known for like highbrow, like intricate films, and then like Maya Rudolph, who is like doing like, I'm doing funny voices over here on Saturday Night Live. Like,
she's like, I just did a sketch on jeans that like hide your farts.
Yeah,
and he's just like, that's great, sweetie.
Wow.
Anyway,
we'll let the audience decide how pretentious you guys just came off.
I know I'm pretentious.
This is gonna get Dave. This is gonna get even worse.
I don't know if we have enough time.
Yeah, we might not have enough time. So, I guess we'll start off this first section. Let me talk about one other thing that I do think I need to criticize about this film. So, as much as I like about it, I do have to admit that the last hour drags pretty good. I think the first 2 hours are perfectly paced. Like, I love the first 2/3 of this movie, and then it gets a little not even convoluted. It just gets dragged down by its own things that it wants to do. I really do think if they cut 15 to 20 minutes out of that last third, it would make for a stronger film. You can still do everything that you want to do, but it kind of just like circles the drain a bit too much for me in that third hour of like, yeah, okay, we get it. We understand how where all these people are in relation. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that.
Yeah, and Paul Thomas Anderson agrees with you too.
Okay.
Because on Mark Maron in 2015, that's exactly what he said. He said, I should have cut storylines out of this and trimmed it down. That's my criticism too, is there's moments where it's too indulgent. Where to me, Paul Thomas Anderson being friends with Amy Mann or enjoying Amy Mann's music is just too much of a like, I related to Garden State, where the Shins just are talked about too much in the movie. You got to listen to the Shins. It's going to change your life. And it's so like silly. And I almost just find it there's moments, and I don't know, what do you guys think the prologue and the epilogue, is that what you'd call it?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not, those are indulgent to me. I think they're cool, and I think they set the tone and the mood, and like you said, Kyle, it kind of sets up the themes, but it's long, and maybe he didn't have to do as much as he did there.
Well, I guess a best part of that, like, I don't know. I'm trying to do this quickly in my head. I think there's essentially like the 5 main storylines, but are there any that you enjoy more than others? Like, if you had to rank them, like, how would you do it? How about you, Dave?
Well, sorry, I thought you guys were going to keep going there, suckling at that teat. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it that way. I'm just trying to think of what you guys just went off of. I hold on a second. As far as trimming the fat, and I guess you're asking a similar question, is there something from a general plot construction that stood out? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell because all of the actors were good in whatever they were asked to play. So do I think that a particular storyline could have been removed? I think all of the storylines should have been removed because it doesn't make any fucking sense at the end of the movie. I think there's something I read about the intentional, the absurdist movement that started after existentialism. So like plays and films and things that were invented to elicit this response that weren't supposed to make sense and that were supposed to be upsetting. And I think we're seeing with the three of us the power of the intention of that, which is when you leave it up to the viewer to decide, then you can have, I just gestured at the two of you, people that are going to read whatever they believe to be the intellectual intent of something in it, and people like me who are going to look at it and say, I think it is pretentious, the entire thing. And if it weren't for the acting, I would definitely hate this movie. It doesn't go anywhere for me. So It's a loaded question you just asked me.
I don't know. What I've observed, and correct me if I'm wrong, because if you completely disagree with me, that's I'd like to know. I find that oftentimes, Dave, you look at a lot at the text, but no subtext, because you often say that there is no subtext to things. Where I will contend that sometimes I try and find subtext when maybe there is no subtext to be found. I just think that there is too much intentionality placed with. We were talking before we even pushed record, like the numbers 8-2, the biblical verses that are stated throughout this movie. I think that he is driving at something about the relationship between sons and fathers.
Yeah.
Whether any of that resonates with you is a different thing. But for me, I think he is trying to show five different storylines of fathers and sons and the specter that your father has over you.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, even there's ones I think work better than others that you probably could just cut out of this movie completely.
Yeah,
I mean, just a quick response before I'll stop talking about this. But if since that is likely the case, because you guys brought it up, I didn't catch it, then isn't this movie written for a specific person, and therefore, am I not supposed to enjoy it? Because I can't quote you a biblical verse.
Right.
I don't give a shit. And when you guys were seeing the subliminal messaging to promote the frog scene, to quote the fathers and sons, it's not just above my head. It's irrelevant to me. And when you bring it up, because you guys are interested in it, I am interested in that. It is fascinating, but I don't see that in the movie experience itself. And I'll only see that in a conversation with folks like you. And I don't think that that's a valuable movie watching experience for me. So when you're right, when you talk about subtext, I think often our brains are designed to build things, so it makes sense to us. But I mean, I want to stay at the surface. I like being superficial. It's
it's a nice place to live. Yeah.
Sure. No, the first time I watched the movie, I didn't get the subtext of it, but I enjoyed probably just the characters were lived in and real, and I felt their emotions, and so I enjoyed it for that reason. And then to be honest, it's not like I just got the subtext because I'm smart. I used the internet, and the internet told me that the 8-2 references, and then you watch it again and you hear particularly it's the whiz kid Donnie Smith. Is that his name? That's William H. Macy.
So. Yeah.
He, in his dialogue, he's the one that kind of brings the subtext out the most when he says there actually is nothing wrong with confusing children with angels. And when he's throwing up and he says Exodus 25, and I know that I hear what you're saying. It's like, well, I'm not interested in the Bible or anything, but he's alluding to the idea of this, of you're being punished for the sins of your fathers. And then the current whiz kid and how his dad is exploiting him. And then you just realize, and then at the end with Claudia, I think her name is, being abused by her father. And that subtext, I think makes the movie just better the more you watch it. And I don't know if that's any appeal to you, Dave, but it does give you rewatchability, and the subtext does allow you to catch it. But I was with you the first time I watched it. I just was enjoying the characters. I wasn't entirely sure what the theme was or how they were connected, but I still enjoyed it.
I think this is an important conversation just to have for, I don't know, reckoning with films like this, because another thing that we were remarking on is that I understand why someone would hate this movie. Like, it doesn't give you a lot of stuff. It is pretentious in very many sections and stuff like that. So intellectually, I get it. For me, I do enjoy films that I can appreciate more and more as I rewatch them. Maybe it's hidden messages. Maybe it's the intertextuality of things. That's a big fancy word from English literature that I use, which is basically this author is commenting on this other author, but you need to know the other author in order to understand what they're commenting on in the first place.
Yeah.
So it takes some knowledge coming into it. And I often go back and forth with this because I think, as an example, it drove me nuts as someone who did actually like the Harry Potter books, going and watching movies where they would reference things that they did not build up in the movies. It's like, yeah, okay, like in the books they talk about this, but you have not mentioned that in these movies at all. So how would anyone know what the heck is going on? And it bugged me in those movies when they would do that, because it's like you're just expecting people to know this coming in. Versus something like there's a movie called Primer. It's all on like time travel, very indie budget movie, but it's basically actual theoretically valid way that time travel could work. But you have to understand like physics in order to understand what's going on in that movie, because they do not give you anything to understand what is going on. So there's a certain joy, I think, for me for sometimes that working, but then I have the entire flip side of most David Lynch movies, which is like there's Mulholland Drive and what was the other movie I watched from him? There's other movies I watch. I'm like, I don't know what is going on. Like I straight up do not know what's going on. And what frustrates me the most, this is Mulholland Drive specifically, is like the ending is actually alluded to 3 times before the credits are over. I'm like, okay, like I don't know what you're talking about.
Cool. Now you know how I feel.
Little insert. It was like a little insert in the DVD, and I remember just frustrating me. It's like actually the final solution is referenced in this scene. And it's like, I don't know. It's just like you are being so obtuse about this. Like, just say what you mean. So I don't know. I sympathize with it. I think it just I mean, to a much lesser extent, this is true for the Marvel films, where they throw little bones to fanboys all the time. It's like, ooh, they mentioned this character by name in this, and that actually references this. It's like, no one cares. No one cares about that. I care about it because it's like I read comics growing up, but like the general movie-going audience doesn't. So I don't know. Does that make any sense to you, Dave?
Well, the 2 thoughts I had is the literal translation of presumptuous, which is to presume that somebody has the backstory or the context of what you're talking about. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys is, because we only did this off air, is maybe just you could explain to the listeners about the 8 and 2, because until you brought that up, when the sky falls, I thought it was the dumbest thing I had ever seen. It's great because it's so visually dramatic, but that's the point where I thought this absurd twist after the group sing-along had gone too far. And I just didn't care about what it was trying to imply. At that point, it was just, it wasn't even a funny visual comedy. It was just kind of disgusting.
Right.
But yeah, maybe you could give us a little context and then.
And I understand, because at that point and we can do spoilers. Right?
We're spoiling. We're spoiling it. Yeah, we're spoiling. Okay. They all die at the end. Yeah.
At this point of the movie, with the frogs falling, it's so out of left field. You're not expecting it. And I kind of feel that's the moment in the movie where you're either going to be like, okay, that's awesome. I love it. I wasn't expecting this. This completely subverted my expectations. Or it's going to be the moment you're like, I've waited 2.5 hours for this. This is, so I totally get it. And actually, Dave, the way that you describe Magnolia is how I would describe Inherent Vice. It's like you're supposed to know something going into the movie to make it enjoyable, and I didn't know what it was. And apparently, it's like you're not in on the inside joke, and you're watching everybody else laugh. That's how I felt with Inherent Vice. So I think sometimes Paul Thomas Anderson does alienate people, and I think it was just with Inherent Vice. I haven't read, who was it, Thomas Pynchon or what?
Pynchon, for Inherent Vice.
And everybody's like,
he himself is a pretentious writer. So like,
so I get it. But to make it less absurd, the frogs falling, is when you understand the theme of basically being under some kind of oppression based on the sins of your parents. So you're being punished for the decisions your parents made. And then the most explicit is when it shows the boulevard, this bus ad lights up and it just says Exodus 8:2. That to me it's not even that subtle. And in the scenes of the game show, there's somebody holding a sign that just says Exodus 8:2. And Paul Thomas Anderson actually makes a cameo. is like a security guard that like escorts them out. So it's pulling on this biblical theme, which is the liberation of Israel from Egypt and the particular Exodus 8:2. And everybody tunes into the podcast for the preaching.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not going to preach at anybody.
Well, just so everyone knows, like every one of our audience members is actually very intimately knowledgeable about Exodus 8:2. So
yeah,
like,
and
That's our draw. That's our draw. Old Testament. Yeah.
But essentially, all it says is, if you do not let my people go, I will rain down frogs on the land. And then if you read on, it just says frogs completely piled up everywhere and stunk up the land because Egypt would not let the slaves go free. They continued to oppress. And so in the movie, I think what the frogs do is it's this statement that says we need to be liberated from the decisions our parents made. We need to stop being punished if our parents like the whiz kid or whatever. We need to be free from what our parents have done. And so basically the frogs is almost like the reckoning. It's the punishment. And it's also supposed to be I think the freedom of people is, now that the frogs have landed, you have some redemption, or you do find, and I think the movie ends with redemption where people get free, especially with Claudia, I think her name is, as the movie ends on her and John C. Reilly, and she has some hope, even though her dad probably just died in a fire. Like, did you guys catch up on that?
Yeah, that's what I assume, but
yeah.
This is the thing about Hollywood redemption that bothers me too, is that is not a redeeming ending for her.
Yeah.
The
there's
road
more to
of
that
trauma
story,
recovery
right?
for that woman
Yeah.
is just beginning, and it's going to be a horror film because she never even gets to see her father acknowledge it before he shoots himself in the head and burns it. It's all of the storyline. I understand where you're getting at. I don't. And number one, if you're not Christian or versed in it, then it's an impossible context to understand. And the second thing is, isn't that a presumption too, that there's a positivity at the end of this movie? I don't see a lot of resolution. I see more suffering. That's why I felt like I had a bad taste when I got up.
I don't know. I think you're right in the criticizing of like, this is a very Hollywood or like movies in general positive ending, because it's shorthand, because it's like we would need another 3 hours to like unpack where they go to next with
John C. Reilly and they're not getting married and having kids, and like that is totally ridiculous. She still has a drug problem. He doesn't know about her drug problem. It is but all it is a moment of hope.
But I think honestly, what the more important step there is that her mother acknowledges that actually goes on, because it seems to me that up until this point, the mother has been secluding that as being something that even happened. And you see like the zoom into the painting where like it actually happened. Like that's the painting that she created. I don't know when, but like she painted it actually happened. And you even see like Stanley standing up to his father. Like, is that going to like magically change their relationship? Probably not. But at least he's made that first step to be like, I'm not going to be the wallflower who sits here and pees his pants anymore. I'm going to be someone who goes and says, hey, treat me nicer. Sort of thing. So I think it's those small in quotes, of those characters changing and being like, I have to accept certain things. I have to change where the progression is going in my life.
And I think that, to me, we're going to get pretentious, Dave. I think that's exactly, it's not the frogs fall and everybody's free. It's the frogs fall and people take one step towards being free. And even in the biblical narrative, Israel does get released from Egypt, and then they just spend 40 years in the desert. So I think what the idea is that nothing essentially sets us free immediately, but it's when we realize that we can take small movements, small steps to basically to become better than our parents were.
Well, and one last thing, and I do want to hear what Dave has to say, which is, I think the other subtext thing, well, not subtext, the other layer of why I appreciate the frogs, because it is absurd and it is weird and odd, is that, again, at the beginning of the movie, it kind of sets you up for that. Isn't it odd that this fire bomber picks up a scuba diver and drops him into the forest? Isn't it weird that this guy's going to commit suicide but actually gets shot by his mother instead? So isn't it weird that just a bunch of frogs fall in LA in this one localized location and causes these epiphanies from like 5 different people?
That's the part that I really dislike the most, which is that the absurd portions of the first intro sequences are things that could and may have actually happened.
Yeah, but
Whereas
frogs have actually
getting
rained
frogs-
down before.
And that's
Truthfully,
why Stanley says this happens.
Yeah, I saw but where did that
It was like somewhere in the US where a tornado sucked up a bunch of like tadpoles and then like literally frogs rained down on a city.
It happens with
Hatched.
tornadoes and hurricanes where it can suck up frogs and drop them. Not in that scale, obviously.
No, not as many frogs as actually drop in this movie for sure.
But it has happened.
I don't know. It's so apologist to put it that way. It's ridiculous, and I didn't really pick. I mean, obviously the father-son thing is a huge theme, but I thought, to my mind, it was. I mean, this is the same thing, but it was about denial. And for example, John C. Reilly being blinded by his chase for companionship. I mean, they spend so much energy showing her, like, just
snorting a lot of coke, right?
Yeah,
like a lot of it.
Just constantly strung out. Like she's not even good at hiding it, but all he wants is to see what he wants to see. And I think all of the relationships hinge on that denial. Even with Stanley and how he's people pleasing through the whole thing, even though you can see he's clearly miserable. He's both aware and in denial of how much he's being taken advantage of. That for me was a stronger sort of, and I think it's part and parcel of what you guys are talking about, which is, I mean, if we want to use the, rhetoric of father-son relationships or these biblical terms, I mean, I think it's the same thing. I think while the punishing part, suffering for the sins of the father is a very specific phrase, at the end of the day, all of the kids have a part to play in it too. And I think none of them are acknowledging or at least able to acknowledge what their past truly is. And if it's the moment of the frogs where we get this break where they can open that up, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if that's the intent of the film, great. It doesn't play in my mind that way because, at that point I just didn't care.
Yeah.
But I think, like I said, it's not a bad movie. I think those are powerful things that are well acted and well brought up. It's shot in a beautiful way that you're compelled to see it through to the end. And whether the payoff is important to the individual is, I think, a contextual thing. Learning how you're both seeing it and have read into it through secondary research, it's fascinating. I probably won't sit down for 3 hours to see if there's a payoff, but I do like hearing that from you immediately after watching it, because then at least I can play it back in my mind and say, yeah, those things may have been there. And then I'll just shrug and move on. I think.
I'm quite like, I think one of the strengths of the movie is, like you said, well, for me, the only through line that stood out to me was denial. I think that's a strength of the movie, that you don't necessarily have to get it right. I think what I like about the movie is it forces you to be introspective and it forces you to almost feel the movie and walk away with your own conclusions. Is that too pretentious to say?
No, I think that's allegedly the intent of absurd writing, is that you're supposed to leave and just say, what the fuck? And then, I felt this way with American Beauty, and you felt this way about Thinking of Your Family. Even though that movie has nothing to do with the way I parent, I turn the movie off and I'm like, am I doing this? And then I have to at least have this dialogue where, no, I'm not yelling at my kid to study more and win me money on a game show, but
Right.
Have I put pressure on him to live up to some standard that he doesn't understand?
But am I making him watch Jeopardy every day? Absolutely.
Wrong answer. Yeah. So, but that's the power of the abstract, I think, if you're engaged intellectually. Otherwise,
I guess for me, like we're the types of movies I like are these types of movies where The acting is really top notch, and there's some really great sequences and lines that I kind of align with, and that I can dig in deeper if I want to have that experience. The, like I guess I'm much more like plot focused than anything else, because oftentimes another person who gets criticized for being pretentious is Terrence Malick. And Terrence Malick is frustrating. Yeah. And Terrence Malick is frustrating to me because it's like, okay, yeah, you've been dancing in this field and drinking dew off of leaves for like 10 minutes, but like, so what? Like, I don't care. Or at
Just
least
because
in this,
it's beautiful.
I know it's like he's great at composing shots that are absolutely beautiful, but it's like I need a plot to carry me through this. So ultimately, this movie might be the same thing, where it has no meaning, but at least I had fun along the way. At least I didn't feel like I was wasting my time. That's again a very me thing, but
Yeah,
That's how I feel about Wong Kar-wai. I spent my whole life with people telling me he was the greatest director coming out of East Asia. And I was like, I cannot. I mean, they're beautiful, but I cannot stand any of his movies because I feel the same way actually right now. I'm just like, what was it all for? At least it wasn't 3 hours long, but
sure.
Beautiful cinematography is.
I gotta know this, Dave. When you were watching it, and they start lip syncing, like it, when we're talking like 2.5 hours into the movie.
Yep.
It turns into almost like a music video. I want to know like what was going through your head when that moment happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think once it started, I definitely groaned. And then without even touching the dial, I was like, there's easily another, I just have this feeling there's easily another hour left because they haven't resolved anything yet.
Right. Yeah.
But they're building to it. And I think because of the sort of side reading I've been doing, that's when the word abstract came into my mind, because I was like, now he's just making fun of me. Now it's turning into this joke where the director is looking at me through his film and having a laugh because he's kind of teasing me that I've lasted this long, right? And he knows that I'm going to wait to see if it's all going to go somewhere. And at that point, it became a challenge, I think, for me to kind of what you guys are doing, find some connecting dots. But I was pretty, not irritated is a strong word, but I was off put because there was no setup that it was going to go that weird at that point, and it just got weirder after that for sure. But I think that was definitely a point where I stopped enjoying it as a movie, and it became more of a game. Yeah.
Right.
What do you think of that moment, Kyle?
Well, see, those types of moments are what I call theatrical moments, where it's very much like we are breaking out into song and dance, which other movies have done that too. I remember like there's a moment in 500 Days of Summer where the Joseph Gordon-Levitt character just breaks out into song and dance, and that never happens again in the film. And it totally works for me because I love theatrical things. That's probably why I like glam rock so much, because it's like they're just putting on a theatrical show for 2.5 hours. I'm down for that. So why it resonates for me is that I think the song is commenting, because what are they saying? They're saying, one second.
It's not going to stop
until you wise up. And then the ultimate one is, no, it's not going to stop. So just give up. So it's this thematic thing that they're kind of talking about, which is like stop focusing on the past and kind of move forward sort of thing. Told in song, told from these separate points of view that I actually think is framed very beautifully. So it just works for me, while also intellectually being like, I can understand why people would hate every second of this.
That's how I feel. Yeah. It's like I have a Dave within me. And that
everyone
Dave
has a little Dave in them.
We all do.
Everybody has a little, and that Dave is like, I cannot believe this was a choice made, and we're doing this. And then the other part of me starts listening to the lyrics and how it relates to each character. And then just the refrain of this isn't going to stop until we wise up. So somebody has to stop the dysfunction. Mm-hmm. Otherwise it just keeps going. So this doesn't stop. We pass on the sins of our parents to our kids and they pass it on. It doesn't stop. And then I just go, Paul Thomas Anderson, I love you. I'm in.
You've done it again.
You've
done it again, Paul.
You've done it. You won me over. And what's funny is with the frogs in the song are particularly jarring, but it's almost a surprise and delight if you buy into it.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I mean, this whole entire movie, which we've basically been saying over and over again, is that if you're in it for the ride, it's great. But if you ever get off of that at any point, it's like I'm okay. You can keep going.
This is what you need to do, Dave. When it's raining, get in your car, put on the Amy Mann song, think about your parents.
Drink a bottle of morphine.
And sing it and park and watch the raindrops on your windshield and just say, it's not going to stop till we wise up. Shed a tear. And then you go, I get it. I get this.
I think, Justin, if you knew more of my backstory, you'd realize I had spent the first 38 years of my life doing that. And it's probably what makes me who I am today.
Well, I think that's wonderful, man.
We are running kind of long here, like very long. There's just three last things I just wanted to mention very briefly. One, I love the line reading Tom Cruise does for "I will drop kick those dogs if they come near me."
I know, isn't that
great? It was improv. That was an amazing sign. Yeah.
So funny. The date that John C. Reilly and the other actress has, Melora something, where it's like, let's just get this all the way. Let's just like speak truthfully. I've been on those dates before. Can I just tell you?
No.
And they are something else. And then
hold on, Kyle.
Yeah.
That sounds awful. I don't want that.
Not on a first date, no. It's like, let's just get all the piss and shit out of here. I'm like, can we just have our coffee? Because I don't need to be a therapy session right this quick into this relationship.
Do you ever go, do you want to kiss me right now? And then you kiss?
Yeah, and then I leave really, really quickly and
it depends on whether
hug my mother.
It depends whether the Coke's kicked in yet.
That's right. I also like it. It's very heartbreaking to me the way that William H. Macy eventually gets to the conclusion of like, I have love to give, I just don't know where to put it.
Yeah.
And boy, I don't know, not to get too far into first date territory here, but that is something that is like constantly on the top of my mind. It's like, as someone who is not in a relationship who wants to be, it's like, I don't know where to put this emotion that I want to be having. Anyways. It's a great little sentiment. I don't know if we need to delve into it.
You have us, Kyle. You have podcasts.
Love us.
Love us. All right. The machine has asked us to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Justin. Justin, I feel so bad when I have to tell guests this. Your rating doesn't matter, but if you had to rate this movie out of 5, what would you rate it?
5.
Oh, going to full 5 here. Okay.
It might be my favorite movie.
Look at
that.
It
is your favorite movie.
Okay. Dave, you know this, but for the people out there that are listening, we have our Letterboxd page. You can go to letterboxd.com/KDVSTM to see our full list of movies that we've reviewed here this season. I think this is number 48. If I'm not 47, I think actually 47 this movie is. So we have a ton of movies over there. KDVSTM, of course, is also where you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. You can send us emails at kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com. And if you'd like to help support us so that we can maybe review more movies and give you more amazing content like this, you can go to our Patreon page. There is a link to that in the description to this episode to help us out over there. Dave, I'm actually very curious because it seems like you're kind of like some of this, hate some of this. So what is your rating for Magnolia?
Just a quick follow-up. Does it hold up?
Oh, I think it does. Yeah.
I think there are some things that don't. Do you know what's jarring in 2020?
What's that?
A sympathetic police officer.
Oh, that's true. So
it almost seemed like you couldn't do that in 2020.
Not to this extent, no. That's interesting that you brought that up because I was thinking the same thing as like when he was arresting the black woman who was also like guilty of killing people by the looks of it in her house. I'm like, oh, what is going to happen here in this scene?
I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable going through the year we've gone through just watching that interaction.
Yeah, I know.
I thought that interaction actually was really fascinating. But isn't there? I don't know. You guys know more. Isn't there a subplot with Orlando Bloom that was cut out where maybe he was the killer? Because that little kid that's rapping is trying to reveal to John C. Reilly that he knew what really happened. and there's
Yeah.
that shadowy figure that runs back and forth, but it didn't materialize.
Believe it or not, there are some things on the cutting room floor.
Wow. You could have probably cut out that whole rap sequence then if they didn't ever come back to it.
If it was Peter Jackson, we'd see the extended cut.
The other thing, can I just say, I was going to mention this, but the actual game show that they're on is so incredibly tough. There is that one sequence, it's like the notes we're playing are in reference to picnic items. Like, you have to know that's an E, a G, and a G to spell out egg. I'm like, that is like so much tougher than any game show that has ever aired on American television. Like, I don't get, like, it's crazy to me.
It's the absurdist element, right?
Anyways, Dave, what would you rate this? Well, do you think it's culturally relevant? Do you think it's rewatchable? I think it's eminently rewatchable. I think there's great stuff in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, yeah, I think it still holds relevance for these themes we're talking about. I think that if someone had told me they didn't see it, I would tell them they ought to, if they have 3 hours and 8 minutes to sacrifice to the film gods.
If you only have 3 hours and 7 minutes, sorry, you can't.
No,
you
yeah,
can't fit it in.
You're not gonna make it. I won't go as far as saying I will never watch it again, but I don't see why I would need to, unless we do a 20-year reunion, Kyle, and we have to.
I'm down for it.
But it was enjoyable, and I think at least for the humanist themes, it does hold up. It is an anachronistic movie at this point. Although they had Uber Eats, which I thought was fascinating. I didn't know you could deliver pornography to your door.
I had that thought too.
I think that is just I think that was just a grocery store that was offering that. It was what I intuited.
It's an LA thing.
Maybe it's an LA thing. Yeah,
it's fascinating.
Head of the curve.
It all comes from, it's cyclical. Time is cyclical. We won't.
And do you have the magazine Playboy? Oh, you do. Oh, you do. Okay. I love his performance. It was so good.
Such a great performance. Yeah.
That little twist was great too, where you think that it's going to go one way because he keeps asking for porn, and then it turns out to be.
It's like, do I still want the bread and peanut butter? Yeah.
It's funny. There's some
it is funny. There is some funny bits. Yeah.
I know you're trying to wrap up, Kyle. Yeah. You can just edit this out. This is just me indulging. It's so funny when Philip Seymour Hoffman goes, it's like that scene in that movie where I'm looking for the guy and you're going to be the guy in the movie that I love.
That is that movie, right?
I thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, Tom Cruise is like a fountain of great, like he is basically the id incel in this movie. Like everything out of his mouth is like, boy, we're still contending with some of this thought process even to this day. But
how fascinating.
It's gold.
I thought it was fascinating to put that in context with how he became presented in public, because the Oprah thing happened after this, and
right.
I think there's a lot of layers. Tom Cruise, in fact, is straight. One of the quizzes, did you know, allegedly he held his breath 6 minutes underwater for that Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible movie, he trained himself. It's why he trained himself to actually fly as a pilot in the new Maverick Top Gun film, and how he's going to jump from space. The guy is great. Anyways, out of 5, Dave, what are you going to rate this movie?
I need another 3 hours to think about it. So I'll, I don't know. I've been actually mulling this over for this entire thing. I think, for my personal feeling of angst at the end, it's going to drop, but the performances are great. So I'm hovering between, probably go in the, maybe I'm going to do a 3.5. I think I should.
I can never prove this, but literally I was thinking, I bet he's going to give it a 3.5. But I can't prove it, so I'm not going to
we've been doing this long enough that I'm presuming you would get a feel, because you're going to go 4.5, I think, but let's see.
Well, that does make it so that, sorry, let me rewind. Dave, what I need to rate it then is this. I think this movie is really, really great, but there are just a couple of things that are little nitpicks that prevent it from being a full 5, like Justin gave it. One is I still think that they could crunch down that third hour. It does not need to be a 3 hour and 9 minute movie or 8 minute movie. Some of those other elements that we've already discussed here in this movie that are slight detractions. However, I am giving it a 4.5. It is near greatness for me. That means that it averages out to a 4 for us. It ties with 5 other films. So we have to figure out where this is going to rate. So from top to bottom, it ties with The Hurricane, Toy Story 2, 10 Things I Hate About You, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and Go.
I would put it on top of all of those. Yeah. I mean.
Well, that's not a fight.
Well, keep in mind, we talked about this. The rating system is flawed only that we're not doing it in genre. So,
well, I don't think you need to do it in
gets
genre,
muddy.
but yeah, it does get muddy sometimes.
48.
I agree with you in that case. Like, I was going to suggest at the very least, it needs to be at the top half of that list. So let's put it here. One second.
Yeah. What's the one before Toy Story 2? It doesn't. Hurricane. Yeah. No, this is. This is a better movie than Hurricane.
So that means that entering our list at the number 11 position is Magnolia.
I'm just watching Justin's reaction that it didn't make the top 10. He didn't punch his computer screen yet, but
I knew it wasn't just based on what you were texting me as we walked over here to record, Dave. But
I apologize.
I know. So again, thank you so much, Justin, for joining us here today. If people wanted to stay in contact with you online, how could they do so?
I don't know why I did, but Justin Bills.
We have to get those sweet Exodus tweets.
Oh man, yeah. Actually, just Justin Bills on Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, for some great content.
Some grade A content. All right, Dave, I guess we should find out what we're going to be reviewing here next week. Let me just push this button. A movie I have not seen before, The Straight Story, is what we're going to watch. It's directed by David Lynch, so I'm sure it's going to be
weird.
Yeah,
speaking of abstract, no, I've never heard of it. So
yeah, I know the plot very briefly, but that's about all I know about it. Old man drives cross country on a tractor. That's all I know.
Sounds great. Yeah,
like a lawnmower tractor. Dave, how are you at squashing frogs?
You know, I did my undergraduate in it, but I haven't yet to develop a thesis. So,
although we did lick the backs of these, so I could have been just tripping for the last hour and a half.
Well, I should make a mention about beards and your father, but we'll leave that. For the next episode.
All right. Are you wearing tighty whities?
Yeah, this is underwear. It's called underwear.
Oh, okay. I just thought it was amazing. Tom Cruise is wearing old man underwear, but that's just me.
That's I don't know. In the '90s, that was the briefs we're in. Yeah,
it was the style at the time.
Boxers was a revelation when that came out. I remember as a teenager, people were like, "You don't have to squeeze."
It was a revelation and a revolution.
You can let them hang out. I stay in the middle. If you need to know,
I don't.
Boxer brief kind of guy. I can send you pics, but
no. Okay, I've stopped the recording. For those of you who were not watching on YouTube live, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to stop this recording here, though.